Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today is the case of Lindy Sue Biechler. And it's another one of those cases that after literally 42 years may have finally been solved through DNA testing. Amazing stuff. I absolutely love these cases, and the fact that we're just knocking off all these old cases. All the cold cases, you know, it's amazing to finally get answers after all these years of a case that you may have thought would never be solved. This case was suggested by Astronaut, so thank you for that. I appreciate any suggestions you guys have, and of course if you have any more, please do let me know. Lindy Sue Little was born on the 31st of January in 1956 to parents Eleanor and Wayne. Now they did split up and she lived with her mum. Her dad remarried and he ended up having another child, which would be obviously her stepbrother, called Mike Little. There was about a decade between them, but you know, they were still really close. They absolutely adored each other. Lindy was described as a free spirit, but also very loyal and hardworking person. She had really good ethics. She had such a gentle smile and was very loving and just such a nice girl. And she also found love in her life as well, like pretty early on. As she was nearing the end of high school, she met a man called Biechler, and they fell for each other. You know, they absolutely fell in love. She worked at a flower shop, Phil worked at a car rental place, and she was deployed out to the world as being a flower specialist. As I said, they fell in love. They got married in 1979 and they went ahead and moved in together into a apartment complex in Manor Township in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Now there was one massive issue with living there though, because Lindy was really worried about staying in the house alone. She felt like she was being watched all the time. She felt like she was being followed. And she was scared to be at home alone. But the really sad thing here is that because she worked as a flower specialist, she would finish like, I don't know, in the afternoon, early afternoon. But then Phil wouldn't be there because he would work later and he would often work into the night. So often she would be home alone at nighttime, which she despised, especially since she ended up seeing somebody peeking through her what they're called, sliding glass doors kind of thing. She saw some weirdo peeking in at her. She was frightened to death. So obviously she's just scared there, which is so sad to be scared in your own home. It must be so awful. Now we're going to go to the 5th of December 1975, where Lindy had been on a normal shift at the flower shop. She then went and picked up Philip's paycheck and she decided to go to do some grocery shopping. Oh, before that she deposited the check, of course. So she goes to the grocery store, she does her shopping, and then she brings it home. And it's believed that probably she would have had to make 2 trips to the car to bring all of the groceries inside. So she brings the groceries inside, they're in the bags, but she never actually gets to put them away. Because shortly after arriving to her apartment with her bags, she was attacked. Her aunt and uncle had actually been planning a visit that night. I've read 2 different things. They were either going to swap recipes or they were inviting her to some sort of game. I'm not sure which is which. But obviously people knew that she didn't like being alone, so they were going to go around that night, and this is when they came across the horrific scene. So when they first went in, they saw that a lamp was on its side. Bit of a worry. Why is the lamp on its side? Not the biggest of deals. Could have just fell over. One thing that was concerning though was that there was no noises coming from the house whatsoever, so they begin shouting Lindy, and she doesn't respond. They go further into the house, and then this is when they find her. Honestly, it must have been so horrific to find her like that. She was fully clothed, she was on her back, and she had a knife sticking out of her neck, which had been wrapped in like cloth or a dishcloth or something like that, and she was deceased. Now, she'd actually been stabbed a total of 19 times with 2 different knives, one of which was her own, the other of which is believed that the killer actually brought themselves, but then, I don't know, grabbed another knife from her, like a butcher's knife or something from a kitchen, and used that as well. The attack was brutal. She had been stabbed all over her body, in her back, her head, chest. There were just so many stab wounds everywhere. And it was also clear that she had been fighting off her attacker. She had defensive wounds on her like hands and arms as well. But sadly, she was seemingly overpowered. Obviously, the police were called straight away. They knew it was a murder straight away. Robbery sort of crosses your mind, but nothing seemed to be stolen. There was no sign of forced entry, which also meant that maybe Lindy knew who this person was, because if there's no sign of forced entry, likely she'd let them in herself, and she wouldn't let, especially with her being so scared of being in the house alone, she wouldn't have let anybody in that she didn't know, maybe. So that just made them believe that obviously she potentially knew this person. Obviously, her family was informed. Everyone was absolutely devastated. Phil, at the time, was still in work. You know, he was devastated to find out that his wife, after a year, was deceased. And her father was absolutely distraught, distressed, to the point where he had to be restrained. That's how devastated he was. Now, they did get DNA from the scene. They also got a man's bloody footprint, which led them to believe that, of course, the killer was potentially a man. And when her autopsy came back, it said that she had died due to like massive blood loss. Now, they actually believe that the killing blow occurred very early on in the attack. At some point, her heart had been pierced as well, so I don't know whether that was actually the killing blow or the stab wound to the neck. But the fact that that had been done early on, and then this person carried on stabbing her out of passion, out of anger, who knows? It's clearly one of those crimes, well, they do call it a crime of passion, don't they, where it's just so rage-fueled and personal. That's what it seemed like. Because normally, if you just want to, if you're just going to kill someone and you do a fatal stabbing blow, you don't then need to carry on stabbing them 9 times. That's why, because it's a crime of passion. So, of course, there was a big investigation. Police interviewed like 100 people within 5 days of her murder. They obviously looked into her husband, Phil. Even though he was in work at the time, they didn't have any other suspects, so they looked into him. They always do, look into family. And Phil was cleared, as well as her other family members, I believe. They would go on to interview between 200 and 300 people in the years that preceded. They would get bits of tips. They also had like another murder occur in similar circumstances. They thought they may have been connected, but it turns out that they wasn't. I can't remember how they did that, whether it was DNA matching or whatnot. It just, honestly, there's been a lot of sort of tips and leads and things over the years, but sadly none of them have ever led to Lindy's killer. And her case went cold for decades. I believe it was a year after Lindy's death, 76, that the family were going to gather around her gravestone to obviously lay flowers and go and visit her. And her gravestone had been defaced. It was painted red. It had scratch marks in, like it was done with like a knife, like grooves, I guess, not scratch marks. And it just must have been so horrific to see, because not only has somebody taken their daughter's life, their husband's, their wife's life, now someone's defaced her grave, her final resting place. It's just so disrespectful. But then a month later, a letter comes through to the police, and they couldn't actually determine at the time whether this was legitimate or fake, but it basically claimed to be the killer. It claimed that they had done the defacing of the grave and all of this stuff. I believe it was written by 2 people, supposedly written by 2 people, but handwriting experts believe that it was written by the same person. But like halfway through this letter, I'll put the letter up, but halfway through this letter, they say that the first person writing it, the killer, has fallen asleep, and this is the friend of the killer, and it carries on like that. It's weird. It's very weird. They didn't actually release a full letter until the 25th anniversary of Lindy's death, and then they said that the original letter had actually been lost. So I don't know whether it was a copy or something like that they released. I have no idea, but yeah. They really did think that one of these was linked. So you've got Lindy's murder, the defacing of her gravestone, and then this letter. Like, even if not all three of them are linked, they believed that maybe Lindy and the gravestone were linked, or Lindy and the letter, something like that, because just really, really strange that if none of them were linked to whoever killed Lindy, that somebody would deface her grave and then somebody else would write a letter about it, or even that same person who had nothing to do with her. Do you know what I mean? It's just strange. But I guess there's a lot of strange people out there in the world too. Now, her brother Mike Little was a massive advocate for trying to find, and still is, not was, still is, but trying to find, well, no, not still is anymore, because we found him. So, yeah, okay, whatever. Was a massive advocate for trying to find who killed his sister. He actually met up with the brother, Vincent, of another woman that was murdered, called Christy Marak. And obviously they did this billboard to try and find who killed Lindy and Christy. And it literally said on it, who killed us? And it showed the pictures, the details. That ran for a little while. I believe the advertising company even put it on for a bit longer, you know, free of charge. But sadly, nothing really came of that. But then the killer of Christy was actually found through DNA technology. And Phil, Lindy's husband, actually heard about this in 2018, that Christy's killer had been brought to justice. He was called Raymond Rowe, and he killed Christy in 1992, and he was finally found through DNA testing. And of course, it was thought, it gave them hope for the case, for Lindy's case, that this could happen to her too. And Philip really sort of hung on to that. And then in 2000, probably pressed for it too, probably so did her brother Mike. And then in 2019, police used the method to try and extract the DNA from Lindy's case, and they tested it. They created an image of what the potential killer looked like, and they did like two of them. One was age 25, one was 65. So that was all out circulating and things like that. They were getting sort of a bit closer to finding it. Then, using the composite sketch along with the DNA, and they built a family tree of her killer. Through all of this, investigators were able to pinpoint a suspect, David Sinopoli. Now, it wasn't just a super quick thing to get to this suspect. You know, they ruled out 2,300 other people with similar genetic information in the Lancaster County, and that left David as the prime suspect. So what they did then was they began basically putting surveillance on David, because they had this match in theory, but obviously they wanted his DNA to kind of solidify it, right? So they're watching him, they're surveilling him, and then he's waiting at this airport with his wife. It was the 11th of February 2022. He was at Philadelphia International Airport, and he's just drinking his coffee, waiting for the flight to board or whatever he's doing. And then he obviously drinks it up. He gets a disposable coffee cup and he puts that in the bin. Now, of course, when it's discarded trash and it's in a public area, the police can just go and take that. So that is exactly what they did. They got it out of the bin. They tested the DNA evidence against what they had and what was in what they had preserved from Lindy's case at the time of her murder. And the authorities are very content that it is a match. So we've finally found Lindy's murderer after all these years. Now, he'd never actually been a suspect in her murder whatsoever. It was apparently reported in 2003 that he had admitted to spying on women, like in the nude and things. Not him in the nude, them in the nude. And he was sentenced to 1 year of probation for that. He was charged with invasion of privacy and disorderly conduct with regards to that one. Then on like Sunday the 17th of July 2022 at 7 AM, the police went around to his house and they arrested him on suspicion of murdering Lindy Sue Biechler. He's actually being held without bail and has yet to make a comment on it all. And one of the detectives actually said that it was really lucky how they actually found him. There was just a lot of things in play that if these little things didn't happen, they wouldn't have ever found him. So it's just amazing that everything fell into place so that they could actually get justice for Lindy and for her family. So it's big in the news at the minute how the coffee cup helped to crack a case that has been cold for decades. Obviously, we're waiting on the trials and things, and more information to come out right now. But it looks like, you know, we finally have the person that killed her after all these years. Her family must be so happy to finally learn that, you know, just... I mean, he got to live free a long time. Like 46 years, but still. Finally, if he's been caught, they can get him done and put him behind bars for what he did, and hopefully that'll be for the rest of his life then. But yeah, that is the end of the case. If you guys have enjoyed this video, give me a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for similar content. Anyway, that's all I have today on the case of Lindy Sue Biechler. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye.